Hello everybody and welcome to Wrestling Man's Wrestling Show, episode number 91. I am, of course, your host, Billy Ankovi. This week on the program, I'm going to talk about WWE. I'll look at Cyber Sunday, TNA, the results from Bound for Glory, Ring of Honor, the Indies, Japan, the NWA, plus the DVD of the week. Now, I'm going to start the show this week with something a little bit different. What I'm about to read is probably some news that a lot of you have not heard before, or maybe it is, depending on who you are. But Scott Hall has been in the news as of late, last week for what he did at the roast of the Iron Sheik. Now, this story comes from the same weekend as the roast, so I'm gonna read this word for word. This is from a website, so. Scott Hall was involved in an accident over the weekend. He was involved in an incident over the weekend. He was actually involved in 3 incidents over the weekend at the Monroe Crown Plaza Hotel's restaurant, in which he flirted with a woman who was with her husband and kids. The man in question sent a letter online detailing the order. Here are some of the things the man wrote. First part, quote, Scott Hall came in a short time later, sat down, and appeared to start drinking heavily. Keep in mind, this is about 5 p.m. At first, there was no issue. Mr. Hall seemed in good enough spirits and caused no issue. Things quickly turned as he began to make inappropriate comments to my wife. Without getting too graphic, he basically stated to my wife that I must have a lot of money because a hot woman like her would never marry an ugly guy like him, and that she should come to his room later and that I would never know. Keep in mind as well, this was in front of my 6-year-old and 2-year-old daughters and well before 6 p.m. He then went on to state that he would like to perform oral sex. I'm apologizing if I'm being too graphic, on my wife every day. Hall left the establishment, but came back a short time later. Almost immediately, when trying to round up our things, Mr. Hall stumbled to our table and in front of my 2 daughters begun to again tell my wife how sexy and hot she was and that she needed to be with him. He then touched her face twice. At that point, I needed to be a responsible husband and parent and ensure the safety of my wife and children, irregardless how upset that I now was. And believe me, I was upset that this person would attempt to ruin the evening for my family for no reason. I very politely told Mr. Hall that we were enjoying family time and that we would prefer to enjoy the rest of the evening alone. I then told him that my daughters were becoming very frightened. Mr. Hall looked at me and began to yell at me, calling me a effing mark. I'm not going to say the F word. I don't want to say the F word. Several times. I must have heard him say this at least 20 times throughout the evening in making fun of someone who asked for a picture or autograph. Of course, he said this after they left. At least we know what Mr. Hall really thinks of the fans that now support him at these shows. Again, he was using this profane language in front of my 6 and 2-year-old daughters. At this point, my 6-year-old began to shake and cry uncontrollably, and I told my wife to get them out of the restaurant right away. Once I was sure they were safe, I came back and asked Mr. Hall what was his problem, and he just walked away in a stupor. I did not realize at this point that several other customers in the restaurant had already complained to management as well about his behavior. I was told after the fact by one group of customers that Mr. Hall allegedly stuck his finger in his nose and attempted to put it in their food. I talked to the police to let them know what transpired, as well as heard from other customers who were equally disgusted with his actions. I was also told he harassed and attempted to intimidate hotel employees. Due to the fact that what Mr. Hall did to my wife and family was considered harassment and a crime, I was asked by the police if I wanted to press charges. I declined. The man appears to have serious issues that need to be addressed. Well, I'm going to go on a rant. Scott Hall, 1 week ago, you were praised by all the fans of the internet as some type of a hero for what the comedian said about Owen Hart. 1 week ago, you were praised for stopping what was a terrible joke. Now this comes up. Mr. Hall, you have a problem. Everybody knows that. I know that. Everybody's given you many opportunities to get your ass back together, get your life back together, and clean up, have a great life. WCW gave you a chance, you blew it. WWE gave you a chance, you blew it. TNA gave you a chance, you blew it. Why? Because you can't get away from your buddies Jack Daniels or Captain Morgan or Miller Lite. Hall, people are trying to help you get rid of your problems. I understand about demons. Beating the demons are a hard thing. But there's got to be a point in time, where somebody crosses the line, says enough is enough, and somebody will kick your ass. So Scott Hall, keep this up, because one day you will be the most unloved wrestler who ever laced boots in the history of this sport. And Scott Hall, you were given so many opportunities. You still have your fans, but yet you're pushing them away more and more because of your childish acts. Scott Hall, get your act together, or else you are going to pay a price that nobody would ever want to pay. I'm going to take a break, and when I come back, I'm going to talk about WWE and the big news of the week.